It's Canada Day, the backyard alive with fireworks, the maple leaf flag flapping in the Calgary breeze, and the sting of betrayal cuts deeper than shrapnel. I sit at the table I paid for, in the house I bled for, every dollar from my war-scarred hands. Then my dad's voice slices through the crowd, venom dripping. She's just a broken soldier, a PTSD wreck who pays our bills. My mom smirks, my brother sneers, and the world stops. My chest burns, my heart screams, torn apart by years of sacrifice, war zones, sleepless nights, my soul laid bare, mocked in a single breath. The pain is unbearable, a wound ripped open. I'm not broken. I'm not their joke. And this is where I draw the line. I came back from Afghanistan 5 years ago, a 34-year-old veteran carrying scars nobody could see. The war left me with PTSD, nightmares that jolt me awake at 3 a.m., but I didn't let it define me. In my tiny Calgary apartment, I taught myself to code, hunched over a second-hand laptop, fueled by Tim Hortons double-doubles and sheer grit. Within 2 years, I landed a job as a software engineer, pulling in enough to buy a house in Bridlewood, a 2,500 square foot dream with a stone fireplace and a backyard for Canada Day barbecues. I gave it to my family. My dad, James, my mom, Margaret, and my brother, Ethan, they moved in, no questions asked. I paid the utilities, the Wi-Fi, even the weekly Sobeys runs that kept their fridge stocked with maple bacon and craft beer. But they never saw me. To them, I wasn't Sarah Thompson, the woman who survived war and built a life from nothing. I was the daughter who didn't go to university, the one who broke in the desert and came back wrong. "You're lucky you've got that job," James would grunt, sipping Molson in the living room I paid for. Margaret would nod, her eyes on her new espresso machine, muttering about how tough life is in Calgary's suburbs. Ethan, 28 and still jobless, would smirk from the couch, saying, "Sarah's just wired different after the army, eh?" As if my pain was a punchline at a Flames game. I sent them $2,000 a month for 4 years, $96,000 total, covering their bills, their groceries, their lives. I thought it would earn their respect. Instead, they mocked my night terrors, rolled their eyes at my tech talk, and treated my sacrifices like pocket change. Every check I wrote felt like a plea for their approval, but all I got was silence or scorn. That Canada Day barbecue wasn't the first time they cut me down, but it was the moment I realized no amount of money would ever make them see me as more than their broken soldier. The sting from that Canada Day barbecue lingered like a Calgary Chinook wind, hot, relentless, and unsettling. I'd hoped it was a one-off, a cruel jab born of too many Molsons, but I was wrong. The weeks that followed peeled back the layers of my family's ingratitude, each moment a fresh cut to wounds I thought had healed. My dad, James, my mom, Margaret, and my brother, Ethan, didn't just take my money, they took my dignity, piece by piece, as if I owed them for existing. Every dollar I sent, every sacrifice I made, was met with smirks, eye rolls, or outright demands for more. I was their bank, their safety net, but never their equal. It started small, the way betrayals often do. A week after the barbecue, I stopped by the Bridlewood house to check on a leaky faucet I'd been paying a plumber to fix. Margaret was in the kitchen, fussing over a new $800 Vitamix blender I hadn't approved. "Oh, Sarah, it's just a little upgrade," she said, waving me off like I was a nosy neighbor. "You're always so serious about money. Loosen up, eh?" Her tone was light, but it sliced through me. I'd spent $2,000 a month for 4 years, $96,000 total, on their bills, their groceries, their comforts. Yet, to her, I was the uptight one, the one who didn't get it. I bit my tongue, fixed the faucet myself, and left, the weight of her words heavier than the wrench in my hand. Then came the hockey night. Ethan, sprawled on the couch in the living room I paid for, had invited friends over to watch the Flames game on the 65-inch TV I'd bought. I'd driven 20 kilometers across Calgary to drop off groceries, $200 worth of Sobe steaks, craft beer, and maple syrup for Margaret's famous pancakes. As I set the bags down, a loud cheer erupted from the TV. I flinched, the sound triggering a flash of Afghanistan, explosions, chaos, my heart racing like it did in the desert. Ethan noticed. "Whoa, Sarah's freaking out again," he laughed, nudging his buddy. "Guess the army wired her brain all wrong, eh?" His friends snickered, their eyes darting to me like I was a sideshow. I stood frozen, gripping the counter, my knuckles white. "It's just a joke," Ethan added, not even looking at me. "Chill." But it wasn't a joke. It was my trauma, my scars, turned into their entertainment. The demands kept coming. Margaret texted me 2 days later, asking for $1,200 to replace the backyard patio furniture because the old set was embarrassing for her book club. "You want us to look respectable, don't you?" she wrote, as if I owed her a lifestyle. I stared at the message in my apartment, the glow of my laptop the only light in the room. I just worked a 12-hour shift debugging code, my eyes burning, my mind still haunted by nightmares of war. Yet, she thought I existed to fund her social status. I sent the money, but each click of the banking app felt like a surrender, a piece of my pride chipped away. The final straw came at a family dinner in early July. James insisted we eat out at a steakhouse in downtown Calgary, my treat, of course. Over $300 of ribeyes and wine, he leaned back, wiping his mouth, and said, "Sarah, you're doing all right for someone who never went to uni. But don't let it get to your head, eh? You're no rocket scientist." Margaret nodded, sipping her Pinot Noir, while Ethan smirked, scrolling through Instagram. I stared at my plate, the $50 steak untouched. For years, $96,000, a house in Bridlewood, and countless nights teaching myself to code while they slept comfortably, they still saw me as the broken soldier, the lesser daughter who got lucky. My fork trembled in my hand, not from fear, but from a rage I could no longer bury. They didn't just take my money, they took my worth, grinding it down with every careless word, every entitled demand. I drove home that night, the Calgary skyline blurring through my tears. The 2,500 square foot house, the Sobeys runs, the Wi-Fi that streamed Ethan's hockey games, it was all mine, built from my sweat, my pain, my survival. Yet, they mocked me, dismissed me, and demanded more. The realization hit like a slap, they'd never see me as anything but a checkbook, a broken machine to fund their lives. My apartment felt colder than ever, but my mind was clear. This wasn't just ingratitude. This was betrayal, and I was done being their doormat. The wounds from that Canada Day barbecue, the hockey night mockery, and the endless demands for money had already carved deep into my soul, but nothing prepared me for the betrayal that came next. It was a crisp August morning in Calgary, the kind where the air smells of pine and the Rockies loom like silent judges. I was at Sobeys, picking up groceries for my own apartment, $1.50 worth of bread, milk, and a Tim Hortons gift card for my coworker's birthday. As I reached for a loaf of rye, I overheard two neighbors in the next aisle, their voices low but sharp, slicing through the hum of the store. "Poor Margaret," one said. "Her daughter's a mess, you know, PTSD from the war, totally unstable. They're collecting donations to help the family cope." The other clucked in pity. "Yeah, I gave $20 at the community barbecue." Sad case, eh? My heart stopped. The loaf slipped from my hand, hitting the floor with a dull thud. Margaret, my own mother, had turned my trauma, the nights I woke screaming, the flashbacks that haunted me, into a sob story to milk sympathy and cash from strangers. I stood frozen, the fluorescent lights buzzing above me like a swarm of wasps. My PTSD wasn't just my private battle, it was now a public spectacle, a tool for my family to play the victim. The betrayal cut deeper than any wound I'd carried from Afghanistan. I'd given them a 2,500 square foot house in Bridlewood, $96,000 over 4 years, and every ounce of my strength to rebuild my life. And this is how they repaid me, by painting me as a broken soldier, a charity case to fund their lifestyle. I left the store, my hands trembling as I gripped the steering wheel of my beat-up Honda Civic. The 10-kilometer drive back to my apartment felt like an eternity, the Calgary skyline blurring through tears I couldn't hold back. I pulled into the parking lot, sat there in silence, and replayed every moment I'd sacrificed for them. The $2,000 monthly transfers, the Sobeys runs for their maple bacon, the Wi-Fi that streamed Ethan's Flames games, all of it was my blood, my sweat, my survival. Yet, Margaret had stood at that community barbecue, likely in the backyard I paid for, and spun a tale of woe about her unstable daughter. James probably nodded along, sipping a Molson, while Ethan smirked, knowing full well I was the one keeping their lives afloat. I stormed into my apartment, slamming the door so hard the walls shook. My laptop glowed on the coffee table, a lifeline to the world I'd built from nothing. I opened my banking app, scrolling through the transactions. $1, $200 for Margaret's patio furniture, $300 for James's steakhouse dinner, countless $200 grocery runs. Each one felt like a knife twist, a reminder of how they'd taken my generosity and weaponized my pain. I wanted to scream, to call them and demand answers, but my voice caught in my throat. Instead, I paced the 600 square foot space, my boots thumping against the hardwood. How could you do this? I whispered to no one, my voice breaking. How could you sell my scars for $20 donations? I sank onto the couch, my hands covering my face. The shame was suffocating, worse than any nightmare from the war. They hadn't just mocked me at dinners or laughed at my flinches during hockey games. They'd paraded my trauma to the entire Bridlewood community, turning my private hell into their public leverage. I imagined Margaret's voice, smooth and practiced, at that barbecue. It's been so hard, you know, with her condition. I pictured James shaking his head, playing the weary father, while Ethan stood by, probably texting his buddies about the crazy sister who paid their bills. The pain was unbearable, a raw, gaping wound that no amount of coding or paychecks could heal. I wasn't just their bank anymore, I was their pity project, their excuse to beg for more. I grabbed my phone, my thumb hovering over Margaret's contact. I wanted to confront her, to demand why she'd betrayed me like this. But then I stopped. Calling would give them power, a chance to twist the story again. Instead, I opened an email to my lawyer, Claire, who'd helped me set up the house purchase 4 years ago. My fingers trembled as I typed, Claire, I need to know my options. They've gone too far. The click of the send button felt like a gunshot, echoing in the silence of my apartment. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about my dignity, my worth, and the line I was about to draw in the sand. The betrayal at Sobeys, hearing my own mother, Margaret, peddle my PTSD as a pity story for $20 donations, shattered something inside me. It wasn't just pain, it was a fire, burning through years of silence and sacrifice. I'd given my family a 2,500 square foot house in Bridlewood, $96,000 over 4 years, and every shred of my strength as a veteran who clawed her way back from war. Yet, they'd turned my scars into their side hustle. That night, in my 600 square foot Calgary apartment, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I sat at my desk, the glow of my laptop casting shadows like a battlefield, and decided it was time to take back my life. I started with the banking app, my fingers steady as a sniper's. First, I canceled the $2,000 monthly transfer that had kept their fridge stocked with Sobeys steaks and maple syrup. The confirmation ping felt like a gunshot, sharp and final. Next, I logged into the utility accounts, electricity, water, the high-speed Wi-Fi that streamed Ethan's endless Flames games. I set end dates for every service, ensuring the next billing cycle would land squarely on them. No more free rides. I pictured Margaret's face when the power cut off mid-blend of her Vitamix smoothie, or Ethan scrambling when his hockey stream froze. The thought didn't bring joy, it brought clarity, a cold, hard resolve I hadn't felt since my army days. Then I tackled the smaller threads tying me to their lives. The Tim Hortons delivery account I'd set up for Margaret's coffee runs? Gone. The Netflix subscription Ethan used to binge true crime shows while mocking my trauma? Cancelled with a single click. I even found a $150 monthly subscription for Margaret's yoga classes at a downtown Calgary studio, something she'd never mentioned but had linked to my credit card. Each cancellation was a weight lifting, a piece of my dignity reclaimed. I wasn't cruel, I didn't delete their accounts outright. I just cut the cord, leaving them to face the consequences of their entitlement. My phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. Yo, Sarah, the Wi-Fi's acting weird. Fix it? I stared at the screen, my jaw tight. Fix it? Like I'd fixed their house, their groceries, their lives for years? I didn't reply. Instead, I opened an email to Claire, my lawyer, who'd helped me buy the Bridalwood house 4 years ago. Claire, I typed, my voice steady in my head, I need to review the deed and all financial ties to my family. They've crossed a line. I hit send, the sound echoing like a door slamming shut. Claire's reply came within an hour. Meet me tomorrow at 9 a.m. Bring everything. Her no-nonsense tone was a lifeline, a reminder that I wasn't alone in this fight. The next morning, I drove 15 kilometers to Claire's office in downtown Calgary, the Rockies sharp against the horizon. Over steaming Tim Hortons cups, she laid out the facts. The house was in my name, held under my LLC for liability protection. Every tax bill, every maintenance fee, every cent for that $800 Vitamix and $1,200 patio furniture, I'd paid it all. You've got full control, Claire said, her eyes steady. You can pull back everything. But are you sure? I nodded, my voice low but firm. I'm done being their ATM. They don't get to shame me and keep my money. Claire jotted notes, her pen scratching like a countdown to the end of their free ride. Back at my apartment, I took one final step. I opened the shared cloud account where Margaret stored her photos, garden parties, book club brunches, all in the house I'd bought. I didn't delete a single file. Instead, I changed the password, locked her out, and removed my access. Let her figure out her own backups. As I clicked confirm, I felt a strange calm, like the moment before a mission when every nerve is alive but focused. This wasn't revenge. It was justice. I was done carrying their weight, done letting them trample my worth. They wouldn't notice right away. Margaret would still sip her coffee, James would still grumble about the Flames, Ethan would still scroll Instagram. But the cracks were forming, and soon, they'd feel the ground shift beneath them. The fire I'd ignited by cutting off their utilities and subscriptions was just the beginning, a spark compared to the inferno that erupted when I uncovered their ultimate betrayal. It was a late August evening in Calgary, the Rockies glowing crimson under a fading sunset. I was in my 600-square-foot apartment, nursing a Tim Hortons double-double, when my phone pinged with an email from Claire, my lawyer. The subject line was stark, urgent, Bridalwood property issue. My stomach dropped, a sickening lurch like the moment before a mortar strike in Afghanistan. I opened the email, and the words hit me like SH26FF36F489845068427127127141CB1851 shrapnel. My dad, James, had tried to take out a $150,000 second mortgage on the 2,500-square-foot Bridalwood house, the house I'd bought, the house in my name, without my knowledge. He'd forged my signature, claiming he owned the property, to fund a shady condo development deal in Canmore. I stared at the screen, my vision blurring. James, the man who'd called me a PTSD wreck at our Canada Day barbecue, who'd sipped Molson in my living room while dismissing my worth, had tried to steal my legacy. The house I'd paid for with $96,000 of my own money over 4 years, every cent earned through sleepless nights of coding, was just a tool for his greed. My hands shook as I scrolled through Claire's attached documents, forged papers with my name scrawled in his clumsy handwriting, dated just days after I'd cut their utilities. The audacity burned like acid in my veins. He hadn't just mocked my trauma or leached off my generosity, he'd tried to mortgage my future, risking my name, my credit, my everything, for a quick buck. I drove 20 kilometers to the Bridalwood house, the Calgary skyline a haze of betrayal. The house stood quiet, its stone fireplace dark, the backyard where Margaret had peddled my PTSD for donations now empty. I didn't knock. I walked in, my boots echoing on the hardwood I'd paid for. James was in the living room, sprawled on the couch, watching a Flames preseason game on a neighbor's borrowed Wi-Fi. Margaret was in the kitchen, scrolling through her phone, oblivious to the storm I carried. Ethan wasn't there, probably at a bar, spending money he didn't earn. James, I said, my voice low, like the calm before a firefight. He barely looked up. "What's up, Sarah? You fixed the Wi-Fi yet?" I tossed Claire's printed email onto the coffee table, the pages landing like a grenade. "Explain this," I said, my words sharp enough to cut. He glanced at the papers, his face paling, but he recovered quickly, sitting up with a scoff. "It's just a misunderstanding, eh? I was gonna tell you. It's a great investment, condos in Canmore, big money. I figured you'd be fine with it, since it's family." His casual tone, as if forging my signature was a minor paperwork error, made my blood boil. "You figured I'd be fine?" I snapped, stepping closer. "You used my name, my house, my life, to fund your scam. You could have landed me in court, or worse, jail." Margaret wandered in, her face annoyed, like I'd interrupted her Instagram feed. "Sarah, calm down," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "It's not a big deal. James was just trying to secure our future." Our future. The words twisted the knife deeper. They'd never cared about my future, only their own comfort, funded by my pain. I turned to her, my eyes blazing. "You sold my trauma for $20 donations at a barbecue, Margaret. And now this? You don't get to talk about our future when you've trampled mine." James stood, his voice rising. "You owe us, Sarah. We raised you, put up with your breakdowns, your nightmares. You think that coding job makes you better than us? You're still the broken soldier." His words were a slap, echoing that Canada Day cruelty, but they didn't break me this time. They fueled me. I stepped forward, my voice steady as steel. "I owe you nothing. I built this house, this life, from my blood and sweat. You don't own me, and you don't own this." I pointed to the deed papers, my name clear in black ink. "This ends now." I turned and walked out, the door slamming behind me. Back in my car, I called Claire, my hands gripping the wheel. "Start the legal process," I told her, my voice cold but unwavering. "I want them out, and I want my name cleared of this fraud." She didn't hesitate. "I'll file an injunction tomorrow to block the mortgage and start an audit. We'll protect you, Sarah." Her words were a lifeline, grounding me as I drove back to my apartment, the Rockies looming like sentinels. This wasn't just about a house anymore. It was about reclaiming my life from those who'd tried to steal it, piece by piece. The fraud was their final mistake, and I was done playing their game. The discovery of James's attempt to forge a $150,000 second mortgage on my Bridalwood house was the final crack in the dam of my patience. I'd survived war, rebuilt my life through sleepless nights of coding, and poured $96,000 over 4 years into a 2,500 square foot home for my family, only to have them mock my PTSD and exploit my name. The fire of betrayal that sparked at Sobeys and roared through my decision to cut their utilities now demanded a reckoning. I wasn't just taking back my money, I was taking back my life. On a chilly September morning in Calgary, with the Rockies standing like witnesses, I instructed Claire, my lawyer, to activate the eviction clause in the LLC agreement that held the house's deed. The notice was drafted. James, Margaret, and Ethan had 30 days to vacate, or the sheriff would escort them out. I drove the 20 kilometers to Bridalwood, the eviction notice in a sealed envelope on the passenger seat of my Honda Civic. The Calgary skyline faded behind me, a reminder of the life I'd built despite their scorn. I didn't plan to stay long, just deliver the notice and leave. But when I pulled into the driveway, the sight of the house I'd bought, its stone fireplace now cold, the lawn patchy from neglect, stirred a rage I could barely contain. I walked up the steps, my boots heavy, and knocked. No answer. I pushed the door open, the creak echoing like a warning shot. Inside, the house was a mess. Empty Tim Hortons cups littered the kitchen counter, dishes piled in the sink, and a half-eaten Sobeys pizza sat on the coffee table. James was slumped in an armchair, staring at a blank TV screen since I'd cut the Wi-Fi. Margaret stood by the window, clutching her phone, her face tight with worry. Ethan sprawled on the couch, scrolling Instagram, oblivious as ever. "Sarah?" Margaret said, her voice sharp with surprise. "What's this about? You can't just barge in." I didn't flinch. I tossed the eviction notice onto the coffee table, the paper landing like a guillotine. "You've got 30 days to pack up and leave," I said, my voice steady as steel. "This house is mine. You don't get to play games with it anymore." James shot up, his face red. "What the hell, Sarah? You're kicking us out? After everything we've done for you?" His voice boomed, the same tone he'd used to call me a PTSD wreck at Canada Day. I stepped closer, my eyes locked on his. "Everything you've done? You mean mocking my trauma, forging my signature, trying to mortgage my house for your scam? You've done nothing but take." My words cut through the air, sharp and unyielding. Margaret's eyes widened, her phone slipping to the floor. "Sarah, please," she pleaded, her voice trembling. "We're family. You can't do this. Where will we go?" Her tears felt like a performance, a last-ditch effort to manipulate the daughter she'd painted as unstable to the Bridalwood community. I turned to her, my heart pounding but my resolve unshaken. "You sold my pain for $20 donations, Margaret. You stood in this backyard, telling strangers I'm broken, to fund your book club brunches. You don't get to cry family now." Ethan finally looked up, his smirk gone, replaced by a flicker of panic. "Come on, Sarah, chill out," he said, his voice weak. "You're blowing this out of proportion. It's just a house. Just a house." The words ignited a fury I'd held back for years. "Just a house?" I snapped, my voice rising. "I paid $96,000 to keep you comfortable while you laughed at my nightmares. This is my blood, my sweat, my survival. And you thought you could steal it." James stepped forward, his fists clenched. "You owe us, Sarah. We raised you, dealt with your breakdowns. You think you're some big shot coder now? You're still the same screwed up soldier." His words were a final blow, but they didn't break me. They forged me. I stood tall, my voice cold as a Calgary winter. "I owe you nothing. You've got 30 days. If you're still here, the sheriff will handle it. And James, any legal fallout from your fraud? That's on you." I turned, walked out, and let the door slam behind me, the sound echoing like a gunshot across the prairies. Back in my car, I gripped the wheel, my knuckles white. The Rockies loomed in the distance, unyielding, like the boundary I'd finally set. Claire's voice rang in my head, "We'll protect you, Sarah." This wasn't just an eviction, it was a declaration. I was done being their doormat, done letting them trample my work. They could beg, cry, or scream, but I was free, and they'd face the consequences of their greed alone. The echo of the slamming door at the Bridalwood house lingered like a Calgary storm, fierce but fading. After confronting James, Margaret, and Ethan with the eviction notice, I drove away, the 20-kilometer journey back to my 600-square-foot apartment feeling lighter than ever. The Rockies stood tall against the September sky, their quiet strength mirroring the resolve I'd finally claimed. I'd given my family a 2,500-square-foot home, $96,000 over 4 years, and my heart, only to have them mock my PTSD, exploit my name, and try to steal my future with a forged $150,000 mortgage. But now, I was free. The weight of their betrayal, their demands, their scorn, it was gone. A week later, I stood in the Bridalwood driveway one last time, watching movers load the last of their boxes into a truck. The house was empty, its stone fireplace cold, the lawn still patchy from their neglect. Claire, my lawyer, had ensured everything was legal, the eviction was airtight, the mortgage fraud reported, and my name cleared. I'd found a new tenant, a single mom named Lisa, who wanted to plant a garden in the backyard with her daughter, Emily. "This place is a fresh start for us," Lisa said, her voice warm as she handed me a Tim Hortons coffee. "Thank you, Sarah." Her gratitude, simple and genuine, was a balm to wounds I'd carried too long. I smiled, the first real smile in months, and handed her the keys. I didn't linger. I drove 80 kilometers west to Banff, the mountains calling me like an old friend. At Lake Louise, I joined a support group for veterans, a circle of weathered faces who understood the scars that don't show. Over coffee and campfire stories, I shared my journey, not the war, but the battle at home. I gave them everything, I said, my voice steady, the lake's turquoise water reflecting the dusk. But they didn't see me. So I chose myself. A fellow veteran, Tom, nodded, his eyes kind. You're not broken, Sarah. You're a survivor. His words landed softly, like snow on the Rockies, and for the first time, I believed them. Back in Calgary, my phone stayed silent. No texts from Ethan begging for Wi-Fi, no calls from Margaret pleading for money, no rants from James about family loyalty. The quiet was strange at first, like the calm after a firefight, but it grew into peace. I walked through my apartment, the glow of my laptop a reminder of the life I'd built without their approval. I wasn't the PTSD wreck they'd branded me, nor the unstable daughter they'd peddled for donations. I was Sarah Thompson, a veteran, a coder, a woman who'd fought for her worth and won. As I sat by my window, watching the Calgary skyline twinkle, I felt a freedom I hadn't known since before the war. The house in Bridlewood was no longer a chain binding me to their greed. It was a home for Lisa and Emily, a place for new beginnings. I sipped my coffee, the taste of Tim Hortons grounding me, and knew I'd made the right choice. The scars from Afghanistan would always be there, but the wounds from my family's betrayal were finally healing. I was no longer their doormat, I was free, and that was enough. As I sit here, watching the Calgary skyline fade into the September dusk, I feel a quiet I haven't known since before the war. The 2,500 square foot Bridlewood house, where I poured $96,000 and my heart, is no longer a chain tying me to James, Margaret, and Ethan's betrayal. Their mockery of my PTSD, their $150,000 mortgage fraud, their endless demands, they're gone, left behind with the empty Tim Hortons cups and the cold stone fireplace. I found peace at Lake Louise, among veterans who saw me, not as a broken soldier, but as Sarah Thompson, a survivor who chose herself. That choice wasn't easy. It meant cutting ties with the family I loved, standing firm against their pleas, and reclaiming my worth from their greed. But it taught me something vital. Setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's survival. It's how you honor the scars you carry, whether from war or from those closest to you. I'm sharing this story on True North Courage because I know I'm not alone. Maybe you felt invisible, giving everything to people who only take. Maybe you've been mocked for your struggles, your dreams, or who you are. If that's you, I want to hear your story. Drop it in the comments below. Tell me about the moment you chose yourself. Your voice matters, just like mine did when I stood up. If this story hit home, give it a like. It's a small way to say you see me, and I see you. And if you want to join me on this journey of courage, subscribe to True North Courage. Let's keep telling stories that matter, stories of strength found in the Rockies' shadow, stories of standing tall. I'm Sarah Thompson, and I'm here, still fighting, still free.